Joining me now is Democratic Congressman Josh Gottheimer, the co-chair of the Problem Solvers Caucus, and Republican Congressman Fred Upton, vice chair of the caucus. Welcome both. It's so good to see you together, working together. Congressman Gottheimer, what are your concerns, if any, that you haven't gotten good answers to about this $1.9 trillion package?
Well, right now, my biggest focus is making sure we get something passed and into law. And so my biggest concern is figuring out how to get a bipartisan package out that Democrats and Republicans can get behind, because as you've reported, Andrea, we're looking at 425,000 deaths in our country. The numbers keep going up. We've got a lot of families who are hungry and a lot of businesses that are hurting. So the key is, how do we get vaccine money out fast and support out fast to get more shots in the arms, to help unemployment is going to roll off those extra dollars in March, and to make sure we're ready for that, and how to get some more direct support out to folks. And so the questions we've had are really about making sure we can get a bipartisan package out the door as quickly as possible.
And Congressman Upton, what do you do? There's so much opposition in your own party in the House, as well as what you would be facing in the Senate.
Well, we need some answers here. We want to know where has the $900 billion that President Trump signed into law just in the last couple of weeks, where has that been spent? Where are there still needs? I know here in Michigan, we have a huge demand for getting the vaccine actually deployed into people's arms. Do we have the right resources for that? This is something that I think that we could pass with a wide majority in both Republican and Democratic parties to try and get the money to try and get into the loop to get that done. But we also look at our small businesses. There was a big issue in the last round that didn't quite get done, and that was to provide liability relief, particularly for small businesses, to protect them against gross negligent claims. So a lot of different issues. I'm not sure that we're going to be as ready to move on this thing as quick as some may think. We got a lot of questions and we want some answers. But at the end of the day, we have divided government. We have to work together to get things done. And there's a real need to, in fact, get something across the plate.
Congressman Gottheimer, what about the $15 an hour minimum wage? Is that one of the first things that might have to go, or might have to be compromised, might have to be less than 15 or phased in? What are you thinking in terms of the progressive wing of the party?
No, it's a great question. And obviously in Jersey, where I live, we have that levels of minimum wage to help folks out. And as you know, people are really hurting now. It's why actually I think we need to get more direct support out to families, especially the working poor who are making minimum wage, and and families who are really struggling, which is where I think those checks need to get to fast. I've heard from a lot of Republicans. I know that that's an issue. The bottom line is we got to sit together, and as Fred knows, who does an unbelievable job in Congress, and we work very closely in the Problem Solvers with our friends in the Senate. We've got a bipartisan group there. The issue we want is, how do we find a place where we can all agree and get it done quickly, as Fred pointed out, to get that help out. So I think we've got to talk, and we've got to be willing. And the president said this 2 days ago, that he'd be willing to negotiate on some of these items to get a bipartisan deal done. I think that's the way we should always govern, and it means we should talk about issues like this.
Well, Congressman Upton, is there any appetite among Republicans for doing anything on the minimum wage?
That's a real difficult hill to climb. I mean, as we look at the small businesses that have really been truly most impacted, it's the restaurant industry. We don't have a $15 minimum wage here in Michigan. A $15 minimum wage for the restaurant industry would be a killer. It really would be. And I think it would be very difficult to have virtually any Republicans support, in essence, a doubling of the minimum wage, knowing that it will impact many of these small businesses and, frankly, just put them over the edge for good.
Congressman Gottheimer, you talked about getting something done quickly. Some of these benefits, unemployment insurance, the mortgage waiver, they're running out in March. Can you get this done by March? And with impeachment pending, isn't there really only a 3-week window to get something agreed upon, at least? Because the partisan divide is just going to become so much worse once the trial begins.
No, the window's tight, but the challenges are continuing to mount, as you know, as the spread continues across the country, and people and families and small businesses in our local towns and communities which need extra help too in our states. Those challenges aren't going away, so we have to act fast. we've done it in the Problem Solvers Caucus, and you saw us do it at the end of the year, as you pointed out, and help get that last bipartisan bicameral package done. There's no reason if we don't sit down, we can find the areas where we can agree and pass that and get it done fast. And that's obviously there's a lot of agreement around the vaccine piece and the unemployment to make sure that in March, when it comes off, that we're ready to help people out and start again and get those checks out. So I think there's places clearly where we can find common ground, and we're not going to stop until we get there, or this group. And so, I think that's our job, frankly.
And Congressman Upton, speaking of impeachment, the Allegan County Republican Party in Michigan voted to censure you because you voted to impeach former President Donald Trump. You were one of the 10 in the House. What's your reaction to that and that kind of punishment we're seeing in Arizona against Cindy McCain, other Republican parties around the country taking action?
Well, I've said all my career that I'm going to support the president, any president, when I think that he's right, and I'm going to not support him when I disagree with him. And in this particular case, I took the stand that I did not agree with him. I was one of the 10, in fact, that voted that way. I understand the sentiments of a lot of loyal party followers, but that is not who I am. And I believe that the oath of my office supersedes any allegiance to really any president.
Well, it's such a pleasure to have you both together to try to be crossing the divide as you are.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.